La Banca del Giappone ha sparigliato le carte sul tavolo dei mercati finanziari. La decisione di aumentare la quota annuale di acquisti di asset si è tradotta in un balzo dei listini azionari, in un marcato ritracciamento dello yen e in un rafforzamento del dollaro, già spinto dalla fine del quantitative easing. Una nuova battaglia nella guerra delle valute che spinge a domandarsi come reagiranno le altre banche centrali. Ne parliamo con Jasper Lawler, Market Analyst per CMC Markets UK. Good morning, Mr. Lawler.
Good morning.
In the wake of the last week decision by the Bank of Japan, is it reasonable to expect anything by the European Central Bank Thursday meeting? After all, this could be a great opportunity to sink the euro and so push the European economy via the exportations.
The Bank of Japan have set the precedent now. It's not just the Federal Reserve that can engage in this kind of level of quantitative easing. It's global central banks that can do it. It depends on your perspective. You could either use this as a reason that ECB could just step aside and let the Bank of Japan do all the hard work for equity markets, or it could be while Japan has set the precedent, take advantage of the timing and do the same.
Because given that we are talking about a new currency world, the Federal Reserve could be tempted to wait more in pull higher the federal fund rates.
That's right. So in the last statement that we heard from the Fed, there was no mention of the US dollar, but in the previous minutes, there was distinct concern about the strength of the US dollar, and that did raise concerns that there would be a new currency war. And we did see some slight respite in the rally in the dollar at that point, but subsequently in this last FOMC meeting in which they finished the last bit of tapering and there's no more QE, there was no mention of the dollar, and they were quite bullish on the prospects for the US economy, sort of implying that actually a rate hike might be a bit sooner. So it's sort of mixed messages, and I think the next set of Fed minutes will be absolutely key in terms of how much they mention the US dollar and their outlook for that.
All this scenario could translate on the equity markets. Should we see the USA, the Wall Street on new highs before year end?
Well, this new stimulus from the Japanese pension fund supposedly adds about $180 billion to global equity markets, and given the outperformance of US markets, it would only be fair to assume that the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones are going to receive a good chunk of those funds, and that's definitely supportive of markets. At the very least, I would have thought it would put some kind of floor under markets, even if we don't see new highs in the near term.
The last question on the European equity markets. This morning, the European Commission has released its forecasts, which are not good, especially for Italy. Do you think that this kind of economy will weigh on the indices in Europe, and that we are going to see higher volatility till year end?
Well, these forecasts traditionally don't work out particularly well, but it is symptomatic of the concerns that the marketplace has about the European economy. We have seen a slight improvement in Germany, and when you're talking about financial markets, Germany is the largest economy in Europe, tends to be just used as the proxy. So if we are seeing some improvement in Germany, then that could feed through into markets, but certainly the problems over the budget in the EU, and even the contribution of the UK disrupting EU rules in terms of immigration, there's certainly a lot of uncertainty surrounding the markets, and that is certainly going to weigh on equities, and it explains why in this recent rally since mid-October, European markets have only retraced about 50% of the declines, whereas US markets are on the tip of making new highs.
Have you a point where you see the European markets in year end, the Italian, the FTSE MIB?
Yes, I think there's definitely there's definite headwinds, and so we're right in the middle of that range right now. So that, like I said, it's about, since that massive fall we saw at the beginning of October, we pulled back about half of that. So now it's really that pivot point. Can we build on the stimulus from the Bank of Japan? Certainly Thursday will be key in terms of whether we can push to new highs in Europe. If there were some extra level of stimulus announced from the ECB, that would be a big catalyst. Stimulus definitely dominates the stock markets at the moment. My personal feeling is they probably will not introduce any more stimulus to the ECB this coming meeting. We have the results of the TL and TRO in December, the next round of, and to determine how well those cheap loans from the ECB fed through to the banking system. There are hopes that there might have been a bit more of a take-up this time since the end of the bank stress tests. So I think the ECB and Mario Draghi, particularly with the euro at about 125 to the US dollar, will be keen just not to intervene too heavily at this point.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lawler, for your valuable opinion. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Bye.